How do you start from a word that has Hamzat Al-Wasl at the beginning? Let's test if you know how to do this. First example. يبشرك بكلمة منه اسمه المسيح عيسى بن مريم. How do I start with this Hamzat Wasl? Is it اسمه, ismuhu, or asmuhu? That's exactly what we're talking about. How do we start from Hamzat Al-Wasl? Fatha, Dhamma, Kasra. Bismillah, let's go ahead. In terms of learning outcomes and what you should get out from this video, number one, you should recognize how to start with Hamzat Al-Wasl. And number two is you should be able to differentiate between Hamzat Al-Wasl when it comes in a verb or a noun, or when it comes in al-ta'rif. So let's go ahead. Bismillah. I'll post a link here above to the difference between Hamzat Al-Wasl and Hamzat Al-Qat'a. But for now, let's just quickly recap what Hamzat Al-Wasl is. Hamzat Al-Wasl is a Hamza that comes in front of a word. It drops if you're continuing, and it is pronounced as a Hamza if you're starting from that word. So ثُمَّ انظُرْ, it dropped there. If I start there, I'm going to say انظُرْ. Now why is it a Dhamma? Now let's dissect that. So to know how to start with Hamzat Al-Wasl, I need to look at the word first. Is the word a verb, a noun, or is it al-ta'rif? That's the first thing I look at. If it's a verb, then the giveaway of what the haraka of Hamzat Al-Wasl is when I start is the third letter. So I look at the third letter. That gives me an indication how I start from that word. If Hamzat Al-Wasl is in a noun, that Hamza will always be a kasrah. If Hamzat Al-Wasl is in al-ta'rif, that is always a fatha. Now let's start with an example of a verb. So the word unzur, unzur meaning look or look at something. So if it's a verb, I look at the third letter. The third letter, the dha, has a dhamma. Therefore, I start with this hamza with a dhamma. Unzur. I did not say inzur or anzur. I say unzur. Another example, urkud, urkud. The third letter here, the kaf, has a dhamma. Therefore, I'm saying urkud. Another one, ud'u, ud'u. The ayn has a dhamma. That's the third letter. So I'm saying ud'u, and not id'u or ad'u. Now, obviously, that's only when I'm starting from that word. If I'm connecting, that hamza drops. There are 5 words in the Quran that are exceptions to this, and these are ibnu, imshu, iqdu, ituni, and itu. Here these words are verbs. The third letter is a dhamma, but here we start with a kasrah. These are the exceptions. The background to these is the singular form of, let's say, imshu. The singular form of it is imshi. So the original haraka of that sheen, imshi, is a kasrah. But because it came in plural, there was a waw, so it was hard to say imshiyu, so the word became imshu. So this dhamma is a dhamma aridah. It's a conditional dhamma. So these are the 5 exceptions. That's a bit of detail, but in the end, these are the only 5 exceptions in the Quran where it's a verb and the third letter is a dhamma, but you start with a kasrah. So we just remember these. But any other words, any other verbs that have the third letter as a dhamma, we start with a dhamma. If the word is a verb and the third letter is either a fatha or a kasrah, I'll start that Hamzat Wasl with a kasrah. For example, isbil, isbil. So here, ba has a kasrah, so I'm saying isbil. And istaghfir, here the ta has a fatha, therefore I'll start Hamzat Al-Wasl with a kasrah. Istaghfir. And if the Hamzat Al-Wasl comes in front of a noun, I will always start with a kasrah. So for example, Isa ibn Maryam, if I start, I say ibn, because ibn is a noun, so I start with a kasrah by default. And if Hamzat Al-Wasl comes in al-ta'rif, the alif lam, we're always starting there with a fatha. For example, alhamdu, alhamdu. Now let's test our understanding. And let's see, can you get these next ones? So in the ayah, رَبَّنَا اكْشِفْ عَنَّا الْعَذَابِ. that second word, that Hamzat Al-Wasl. If I were to start from that word, how would I start? First thing I look, is this a verb or noun or ala ta'rif? Well, this is a verb. Therefore, I look at the third letter. What's the third letter? Kasrah. Therefore, I'll start with a kasrah. Ikshif. If I'm continuing, I'd say رَبَّنَا اكْشِفْ. The second one to test your understanding. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. How do I start from that one? What do I look at? It's a verb. And what's the third letter? Jim with a dhamma. Therefore, if I start, I'd say usjudu, usjudu, and not isjudu or asjudu. I say usjudu. And the last one to test your understanding here, يبشرك بكلمة منه اسمه المسيح. How do I start from that word? It's a noun, therefore it's always a kasrah. اسمه المسيح. Now let's summarize. Hamzat Al-Wasl, when it comes in a word, if I'm connecting that word, it drops away. But if I'm starting from that word, to figure out how to start, is it a kasra or a dhamma, I look at what the word actually is. If it's a verb, I look at the third letter. If the third letter is a dhamma, then I start with a dhamma, except the 5 exceptions we talked about. If the third letter is a fatha or a kasra, therefore I start with a kasra. If the word is a noun, it's always a kasra. And if it's in al-ta'rif, that Hamzat Wasl, if I'm starting from there, it is always a fatha. I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.